Welcome to another divorce recovery session. I'm Bruce Wadzeck, minister with the Princeton Church of Christ. I've been conducting these sessions for about 30 years, and what I want to talk about in this one is something that I think is very, very important. I think in our society, we've been taught that real love is this all-encompassing obsession about another person. And really what we're talking about is not real love, we're talking about addiction. Sometimes the only types of relationships that we develop are addictive relationships. And so what I would like to talk about in this session is breaking your addiction to a relationship. Sometimes the reason why you suffer to such an extreme as you're going through separation and divorce is because your relationship to begin with wasn't a healthy one, but an addictive one. Just to give you a feel how our society promotes this kind of idea of romantic love, we use terms like, I need you, I need you, I can't live without you. And I like this one, I'm crazy about you. As if those are wonderful things. But all those things are suggesting a kind of addictive relationship. But let's look at the definition of what an addictive relationship is so that you can better evaluate the nature of what your relationships have been. It's compulsive, not freely chosen. We feel driven to continue in a relationship even though we find ourselves miserable. We feel panic and anxiety at the thought of the relationship terminating. If we are separated from our partner, we have withdrawal symptoms, as if you're withdrawing from a drug. You have an obsession over being reunited to the one you've been separated from, just like a person that's been taken off of a certain addictive medication or alcohol that they become addicted to. They obsess about another drink. They obsess about taking the drug again. And so, unfortunately, we can sometimes and unknowingly only have an addictive approach to relationships. Another sign that it might be addictive is after a grieving period is over, we may suddenly not just feel acceptance that the relationship is over, but we feel exhilaration. We feel this tremendous burden has been removed from us. And this is a symptom that it was an addiction, and yes, we went through withdrawal, but once we get to the other side of that, now we're elated that we're not connected with that person. Nearly all marriages will have some element of what we might call addiction. I would call it emotional bonding. It's only natural in the most important of relationships, spouses, and with children, that there's emotional bonding with them. It kind of serves as a cement to hold relationships together. But we're talking about the more extreme forms of this. For example, Bob and Betty can't live with each other, but they can't live without each other. So this extreme thing, when they're together, they're constantly fighting, squabbling, unhappy, miserable. But if they separate, they're constantly miserable and happy and just can't wait till they get back together again and then go through the cycle again. Or Steve and Stacy feel so connected and are so miserable in their relationship, they can't really get out of it by just saying, I want a divorce. They have to have an affair to kind of pull them out of their relationship by getting in another addictive relationship. Very unhealthy. And Nick and Nancy either get very much involved in their career or get very much involved with the children because they're so miserable in the marriage that they have to divert their attention. They can't leave, but they've got to do something else to get their mind off of the misery that they feel and the obsession to stay that they also have. Now, what's the root cause of an addictive personality and being addictive, especially to a relationship? Now, there are a number of theories about this. The one that makes the most sense to me is the one that talks about dependency needs or attachment hunger. Think of it. This is what occurs to begin with. When a baby is born, initially it is totally dependent on its mother and caregivers to feed it, to take care of it. A child's not able at all to take care of themselves. And so they emotionally bond with the significant people that are taking care of them at that point. Babies are seeking a kind of oneness attachment to their mother, whom they are totally dependent upon. Now, that's only a natural phase we go through, but by the time we get to be about 2 years of age, children naturally feel a need to develop more independence. Sometimes we call it the terrible twos or threes because they don't know how to be independent, and they can be quite cranky as they do so. But again, this is an essential developmental stage to not stay completely dependent on another person to gain a sense of oneself. Now, if parents are uncomfortable with the children developing some independence and they continue to control and make the children overly dependent on them, don't allow them to take 2 steps out of their sight, that kind of thing, then what that can do is continue to keep the children in a dependency state. And if other experiences in your life after that reinforce this sense of, I've got to have somebody else to take care of me. I've got to have somebody else in my life, or I'll be dead. I'll lose everything. I'll have no potential hope for my life. This is a real setup for when the child gets to be older and then seeks to leave the home. Sometimes, sometimes they can only consider this if they're going into an obsessive relationship. You see, the power of the sexual experience itself is a emotionally regressive experience. At the point of climax, we feel a kind of oneness with the universe for a moment. However, we're not one with the universe. It's just a feeling that we have. But this is the exhilaration, we think, that young children have by being united to their mother or their dad in a super close relationship. Good when you're 2, bad when you're 22. Thus, addictive relationships offer an illusion of mystical union with one that you love. But they never fulfill their promise because you are overly dependent. Healthy relationships are interdependent. You have some which you depend on one another, but you have healthy independence as well. But in an addictive relationship, at least one party, if not both, are completely caught up, completely dependent on the other person. This is the fundamental nature of an unhealthy relationship. 2 individuals who feel incomplete or less than whole may desperately try to become completed in a relationship. But that puts intense pressure on the other person to fulfill you, to satisfy this deep need of attachment, which is not realistic, especially if you're dealing with an adult and you're almost calling out to the other person to be your parent. And adults need adult relationships, not parental child type relationships. Divorce and separation can be the ultimate fear of an addict. The drug is going to be removed cold turkey. It brings fears of abandonment, death. All these kind of infantile fears surface because, unfortunately, we've developed an addictive approach to relationships. There have been some interesting studies, scientific studies done on this attachment hunger. Everybody has some of it. And if we feel secure, then we're able to have relationships. There are a couple of studies, I'll just allude to one, where a group of students doing graduate level studies were going to school during the summer and agreed to be a part of an experiment where they divided the group into two equal academic groups, meaning their scores academically, when you put them together as a group, average a certain level, and therefore you'd expect that to be maintained. And then what they did is they applied subliminal messages. When you went to sleep at night, they play a recorded message that would say something over and over again. One of the messages for one of the groups was, "Mother and I are one." This is that ultimate security that we need at the start of our lives. The other people heard just an innocuous message. "People are walking." So there's no emotional significance to that. The final test results showed those having their attachment hunger needs addressed averaged around 90 on their scores, where the other group, even though they should have been similar academically, scored like 82.7 or 83. So that's a statistically significant difference. One of them had this subliminal emotional need suggested that it was met. The other just simply had nothing to substantiate this emotional need. So consequently, we believe that this attachment hunger is the roots of what can later become an addictive personality. Now, addictive personality, it can be alcohol, it can be drugs, or could be a relationship, or it can be a combination of those and other things as well. So the first thing we need to do is evaluate how healthy our relationship was. So finally, what can you do if you find out you have a tendency towards addictive relationship? How do you stay out of future ones, and how do you heal and become more healthy? Well, the first thing I suggest you do is a relationship review. Go back as far as you can remember to this relationship you're having, but if there are other earlier romantic relationships, and evaluate them. What were the physical characteristics of the person that you were attracted to? Are there similarities? What about their personality traits? Do you see that you are attracted to the same kind of personality type? Are patterns of interaction? Were you the one that initiated things, or was the other person? Were you controlling, or was the other person controlling in the relationship? Were your emotional needs met, or were they not? So you look back at your relationships and you look for patterns. And if you see patterns of unhealthiness in those relationships, that's another suggestion that this present relationship that's ending is not just the problem, but your problem is much deeper. This unconscious drive for attachment with another is, if you will, the insecure child within us that's seeking to be connected. So what can you do? You can practice being a good parent to the child within you. Calm the child's fears. Talk to yourself in adult but soothing terms. Reassure this child that's feeling very insecure they're going to be okay. Most of us know how to be a loving parent, but sometimes we forget to be a loving parent to our own inner child, especially one that feels disconnected and sad and alienated. Addiction can also be an identity crisis. Who am I? Apart from married to X person, or apart to this is my job or my career, some people, if you take those things away, feel a total loss. They don't know who they are. They are only the husband of so-and-so, the wife of so-and-so, a job description of this particular type. This is who they are. And of course, we are more than the sum of our job skills or job title or the relationship that we're in. And so for some, they need to really get back to understand who they are and come to a reasonable acceptance of who they are. And of course, counseling can be a good way to go through this process and experience some healing. Usually an addictive person is a lonely person who is either totally isolated from meaningful relationships or in one obsessive relationship. Now, this is what real love is. I'm obsessed about you. I can't live without you. I just think of you constantly. And if we're apart, I just feel this tremendous anxiety and wait till we get back together again. This is addictive, not healthy. And so consequently, we need to establish other meaningful, healthy relationships, non-romantic friendships. Because it's only when we have a support group of people that we know and that know us that's greater than just a marriage relationship that we can be supported healthily by the people that we know and that we can grow healthily. So if you find yourself either isolated or in an obsessive relationship, you need to begin to build healthy friendships with other people. Usually an addictive person that's lonely doesn't perhaps have those resources. So, look around for a divorce recovery support group. Look around for groups to join to give you maybe that are about something you're interested in. Don't allow yourself to become isolated with the only out being some new obsessive relationship. So, the bottom line, I guess, on all of this is, what is this a whole attachment, hunger? What's this all about? Why do we all have this? In my opinion, I think that it's ultimately a God-given innate drive in which we know that we cannot be completely independent. We're in need of another. And ultimately, I think it's God-given because that's the only dependency relationship in which it's absolutely true for the rest of our life. We need to be in a healthy, dependent relationship with God. We have a hunger to be in relationship with Him, and apart from that, other relationships are not going to fully satisfy this drive that's within us. And so, I think to solve this is also a spiritual quest. And why do I think this? Well, let's take one of the bigger addictive issues, alcohol. The most successful thing we found to treating alcoholism is AA, Alcoholics Anonymous. If you're not familiar with these 12-step groups, I'll just sum it up by saying this: they are a spiritual growth groups. So they recognize the deepest need of the addict is a spiritual relationship with God. And so as a part of your recovering, if you tend to be an addict, means healthy relationships with others. And so often AA is in a group setting, but it's also growing spiritually and finding unity and connection with God. So if you take all these things together, maybe we started out not having our attachment needs satisfied. And so now we don't remember those early stages. So therefore, we don't even know. It just seems like we've always had this particular issue. But it can be resolved. Again, good counseling can help, a good support group, and putting yourself where you can grow spiritually.